Today is the 370th anniversary of the hanging of Alice Young. Why is that significant? Well, she was from Windsor here, and her death led to a floodgate of further witchcraft indictments and hangings throughout New England. This was in May the 26th, 1647, and these didn't really stop until the Salem, Massachusetts hangings were done, and they had accused so many people they realized just how ridiculous it was. But in the state of Connecticut, not many people in the country, and not even in Connecticut, know that there were 34 indictments. There were 11 hangings in total, but that wasn't the crux of all the suffering. That wasn't the only suffering. There were many, many orphans that were left behind. There were many people that lost any financial wealth, however little it was lost. They may have lost their property. Many had to flee once they were accused because they knew it was a certain death. Many others were banished, or they were not further accepted by their community. So today we want to remember them. It's important today that we do remember them, not just to acknowledge our history, but also to use their stories as pertinent reminders of why scapegoating and blame and prejudice does not help our society in any way, shape, or form. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Tony.
Thank you, Beth. Can everyone hear me? Yes. I wrote a little speech. I love to write speeches. And I'm going to read this to you, but then I'm going to also tell you how we got to this point, how we got to this day. I think I'm getting feedback here. How we got to this point, but let me start with my speech. Today, May 26th, is the 370th anniversary of the first witch hanging in what would later become America. We take this moment in time to remember not only 11 people who lost their lives for the crime of witchcraft, but also for the many children who lost a mother or father or both. Many children whose well-being now depended on the charity of others. They all lived in a time when the laws were made by men who felt divinely inspired. Once convicted, there was no time for appeals. Justice was swift, and the journey to the gallows was short. Today we reflect back on those chaotic times when intolerance and fear gave men a new word, witch hunt. Today, in modern and enlightened times, that word still represents fear and intolerance of those others who we believe are different from us. Our new and growing country learned many lessons from the Connecticut colony and Salem, Massachusetts, and those lessons should not be forgotten, because it is very easy to slip back to those intolerant times. A time when people feared those others who looked different, who talked different, and who worship different gods. We must still be vigilant of people who will take us back to those times. Martin Luther King, Jr. gave us these important words. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Thank you. Now, I'm going to give you a little history, well, actually a long history. I've been on this project for almost 11 years. I've met so many different people in my adventure to this day. But it all started back in 2005 when several people went to a lecture given by our state historian Walter Woodward. And his subject was witchcraft. And we went and we listened to his presentation, and afterwards several people, myself included, approached him and asked if anything had been done by the state of Connecticut to clear the names of the 11 people who were hanged. And Walter Woodward replied at the time that he thought it was a good idea. So we started on a process that originally started out by learning that in the state of Connecticut, the governor does not have the authority to pardon anyone. That falls to the Board of Pardons and Paroles, and when we wrote to them, they replied that they don't pardon dead people. So somebody suggested the Queen of England. We were under the crown in those days. So we wrote to the Queen of England, and she responded, and her staff wrote that in order for them to clear the names of these individuals, they have to reopen each case, which we knew was impossible because so many records have disappeared. So the next step, we contacted a local representative and we presented a resolution before a General Assembly back in 2008. And they heard 45 minutes of testimony from descendants. However, the bill never passed and it was forgotten. The next step was what they call a governor's proclamation. The governor has the authority to give everybody a proclamation, and I'm sure we've all seen them when somebody retires and they read off a really official looking document, which is a governor's proclamation. Well, I wrote to Governor Malloy and he never responded. I wrote several letters and I never received any response from his office. So the next step, we contacted our state representative, Michael D'Agostino. Initially, he didn't respond. We sent him over 500 names on petitions to clear the names of these 11 individuals. And nothing happened until I met Beth. And right here in Windsor, with Beth and the mayor of this town, made history. They opened that door. They held the key. And so, the town council of Windsor, several people presented before that. They heard testimony, they voted on it, and it passed unanimously, 9-0. And folks, that made history. So now that's where we're at this point. Those two individuals, Alice Young and Lydia Gilbert, have been cleared in the town of Windsor. And now it's up to the other 5 towns to pick up the ball. Thank you.
We would just like Mayor Trinks to talk briefly about the process here.
I promise it will be brief, although the process itself was not particularly brief. Government works slow for a reason, but we found in this one that the right thing really can happen. I just want to start by saying that this process started as a result of Beth's book. It started to regenerate a lot of interest in the town of Windsor. I mean, we all knew that, for better or for worse, we had hung the first witch in 1647. But Beth's book started people talking again, and sitting having coffee one day was, I believe it was Beth, said, I wonder if we could do anything to clear the names of the two. And she brought in Tony, and she said, he's amassed so much information. So I'm thinking, a notebook or something. Well, he had one of those things on wheels that you bring in. I mean, this guy has devoted so much time and so much energy and such a piece of his life to do this for people who died 370 years ago. So we met, and Tony lives downstate and was willing to drive up to Windsor as often as we needed him, and Beth would get stopped from her schedule, and we met, and we enlisted the help of the First Church here in Windsor, which was a functioning church at the time. And we'll never forget the quote from the associate pastor who said, "Yeah, we probably had something to do with these." So they presented to their legislative body within the church, and the church thought it would be a really good idea to acknowledge that what we did was wrong at the time. And so we started to work on enlisting the support of the other council members. And it really was not an adversarial request. And the two differences that we have is a proclamation I can sign off on, but we wanted this to be a group. We wanted the town as a whole to acknowledge this. So we went with a resolution which has to be voted on by the entire town council, 9 of us. So the resolution was crafted. I sent it to my council folks. We had some discussions, and honestly, probably the biggest question was, well, why now? And well, why now was because 2 Windsor residents lost their lives. That's why. It's as simple as that. So not only did we start to gain some momentum on the council, but then we got an email from a young lady in Michigan who is the 10th granddaughter descendant of Alice Young. And man, you want to personalize something that happened 370 years ago. Talk to a relative. And I believe that her dad, who passed away, his birthday is today. So May 26th has a significant impact on her. But again, the night we set up the resolution, we had a presentation by Brianna, speaking for Tony, who couldn't be there, Shar from First Church, and by Beth. And I can tell you, at 21 years in elected office, I never saw the town council, all 9, listening to every word that was being spoken. No texting, no doodling, no, every word they hung on. And Councilor Simon during the meeting read Morgan's email, the descendant, and you could have heard a pin drop. And I don't think there was, I don't even recall, and I'm gonna rat him out because one of the council members is also here this evening behind the camera, Randy McKinney. And there was some hesitation, there was some question, there was a very little debate, and when it came time for a vote, we had a 9-0 unanimous vote on it. So our hope, certainly mine as the mayor, is that Tony takes that resolution and he beats down every other town council, and we even joked about it. I said, use the same resolution, change the names. You don't have to write it, you just have to pass it. And when you think about it, it really boils down to 2 human lives were caught up in the hysteria of the time and wrongly executed, lost their lives. And the town of Windsor says, no, we don't support that. We're going to make sure that from now on, Alice Young and Lydia Gilbert are not known as the 2 young ladies that were witches. Wrongly executed, perhaps, but not witches. Caught up in the hysteria of the time. So it was an honor to have this happen under my watch. These folks have been far too kind to me about my part of this, but the legwork that they've done is what really built this thing. I just got to put the period at the end of the sentence. So thank you all for coming out. If you're from out of town, welcome to Windsor.
So if you're wondering what those other towns were, they're in your program under the list of names of the people who were hanged. They were also from Wethersfield, Fairfield, Stratford, Hartford, and Farmington. So if you're from those towns, bug your council members. And then of course we would like the state to eventually do something that would be very meaningful. So I want to hand the microphone over to Kathy now. She's going to be starting with a prayer and leading us in a ceremony. With the ceremony, we're going to read something about each of the 11 victims. And before she gets started, I'd like to know if there are any descendants of those who were hanged. If you can raise your hand if you'd be interested in reading something and come up here, that would be great. If there aren't enough descendants, then we can take volunteers as well. So if you're interested, come up to this table over here and we'll get everybody in line, and after Kathy's done talking, she's going to lead us with the drum in a procession, and we're going to get in a big circle.
Thank you, Beth. I feel like there's a lot of momentum happening with this, and I really think that we're going to be really moving forward with getting more awareness out to our state and all throughout New England. This is a passage that I'm going to read from Nathaniel Hawthorne, from the Twice Told Tales. As you know, he wrote the Scarlet Letter, and actually I'm not sure if it was his great-grandfather, was one of the judges on the Salem witch trials. So, he really worked out a lot of his issues through his writing, his family guilt. But this passage is from the Maypole of Marymount. And one other thing I wanted to say is, it just shows even back then the differences that Puritans had with people who were different. And one of the themes that I bring up in my own book is that a lot of people came that brought the old ways with them. They brought a lot of the folklore and the folk ways with them. So we read this, I think it was 10 years ago, right, Tony, at a little ritual we did on the South Green in Hartford. In due time, a feud arose, stern and bitter on one side, and as serious on the other as anything could be among such light spirits, as had sworn allegiance to the Maypole. The future complexion of New England was involved in this important quarrel. Should the grisly saints establish their jurisdiction over the gay sinners? Then would their spirits darken all the clime and make it a land of clouded visages, of hard toil, of sermon and psalm forever. But should the banner staff of Marymount be fortunate, sunshine would break upon the hills, and flowers would beautify the forest, and late posterity do homage to the Maypole. So even back then, the old ways, the pagan ways were celebrated, and unfortunately we know that these people were a threat to the governments at the time, who, even though they left for religious freedoms, were unable at that time in history to allow others to celebrate their own religions. Blessed be.
Okay, before we get started, once again, I want to thank all of you for coming here and taking the time to come and enjoy with other people of like mind. And also, I hope later on you'll go and eat some of our food. But I'm going to open this event with a prayer, and this is a non-denominational prayer. As Beth had said earlier, this wouldn't have been completely possible without the help of the Christian churches. The first church in Windsor helped clear the names of their two people who were part of their church. But I'm going to start with this prayer for common ground. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Because everybody always says I'm a loudmouth, but today, may I be open to others' ideas and beliefs, respectful of our differences, and not threatened by them. May I grow in understanding of my own motives, knowing that people often act out of their own fears. May I be forced for replacing fear with insight, helping us all to be patient and kind as we walk, as we talk. Strength, real strength, can always find compromise. Working together, may we find common ground. This will enable us to move forward with a shared purpose. May we see what is truly important and unites us, focusing on that to banish roadblocks of ego and fear. Today, may I be open to others' ideas and beliefs. Thank you. Very good.
I'm very close to Alex, so I will do that.
Mary Johnson from Wethersfield, 1648.
Mary Johnson, a servant girl from Wethersfield, was first wife and in Wethersfield for Tilbury. Later, in 1648, she was suspected of witchcraft and sent to prison. She confessed to uncleanness with men and devils and having murdered a child. Found guilty of witchcraft, she was hanged on December 7, 1648. Reverend Cotton Mather stated in his book Memorable Providence, 1689, at that execution she went out of the world with many hopes of mercy through the merit of Jesus Christ. She died in the frame of mind externally to the satisfaction of them that were spectators of it. Our God is great forgiver.
John and Joan Carrington of Wethersfield, 1651.
Joan Carrington of Wethersfield was the wife of John Carrington. Some scholars think she may have been Joan Shipperance, who was once a servant accused of slandering the wife of Thomas Staton in September of 1649. The reason for her hanging, an indictment for witchcraft, was unclear, but we know from our records that she was found guilty of witchcraft with her husband.
John Carrington. John Carrington arrived in New England in 1635. He was a carpenter who settled in Wethersfield and was there for about 8 years. The date he married his second wife, Joan, is unknown. He is also a father. He was indicted and convicted of witchcraft in 1651. He was approximately 49 years of age at the time of his death. The reasons are unknown. Rest in peace, John. We remember you today.
Goodwife Knapp, Fairfield, 1653.
I'm reading for Goody Knapp from Fairfield in 1653. As in most cases of witchcraft, many trial records are gone. What we know of Goody Knapp comes mostly from later testimony from Staples' Ludlow defamation trial. Goody Knapp was found guilty and sent to prison, where she was examined by a committee of women who searched her body for witch marks. The committee found that she did indeed have these marks, and her hanging took place in Try's Field beyond Indian Field. Today, that would be in the area of Fairfield Avenue and Ellsworth Street in Bridgeport.
Goody Bassett, Stratford, 1651.
In May of 1651, several magistrates traveled from Hartford to Stratford to try Goody Bassett on the charge of witchcraft. No trial records remain, but from later accounts it is known that Goody Bassett was found guilty and hanged. It is believed that the execution site was located in Stratford, in the area where the railroad overpass crosses West Broad Street.
Lydia Gilbert, Windsor, 1654.
Lydia Gilbert of Windsor was accused of a crime she did not commit. 3 years before her witchcraft accusation, a man named Henry Stiles died during a militia exercise on the town green. Thomas Allen shot him in the course of him carelessly mishandling his gun. We do not know why the rumors and suspicion increased from Henry's death in 1651, but by 1654, blame had shifted from Thomas Allen to Lydia Gilbert. There is some evidence that Henry was a boarder in her and her husband's home. She was convicted in 1654 and is thought to have hanged in Hartford for the crime of witchcraft and murder. Rest in peace, Lydia. We remember you today.
Mary Sanford, Hartford, 1662.
Mary Sanford, Hartford, 1662. No court records other than her indictment exist why she was hanged. She was indicted for familiarity with Satan and having acted and also come to the knowledge of secrets and preternatural way beyond the course of nature, to the great disturbance of several members of the Commonwealth. Mary was found guilty and most likely hanged. Her husband Andrew was also charged but not hanged. He moved to Milford in 1667 and remarried. Mary and Andrew had 5 children.
Nathaniel and Rebecca Greensmith from Hartford, 1663.
Nathaniel Greensmith was the husband of Rebecca Greensmith. For worst, out of love to her husband's soul, Rebecca made an accusation against him, which of itself secured his conviction of the same offense, with the same dire penalty. Nathaniel was a thief, accused on more than one occasion of stealing from neighbors. He was likely a wife-beater. Nathaniel pleaded with her to come to her senses and not lodge the accusation so that he could live and care for her daughters. He was killed with his wife for the same offense in January of 1663.
Rebecca Greensmith was accused of witchcraft by teenaged Ann Cole sometime after Rebecca and her ragtag group of merrymaking under a tree on the green near the Greensmith house. Her husband Nathaniel, James Wakely, good wife Ayres, and Elizabeth Seeger were present. They all danced and had a bottle of sack. Other nocturnal gatherings were held, and suspicions were awakened in the neighborhood. Rebecca was arrested, held, and questioned until her sanity likely broke. She confessed to knowing the devil and having seen him in the form of a deer. She then accused her husband. She and her husband were not perfect, but they were not witches. She was killed unjustly on Gallows Hill in the frigid January of 1663, alongside her husband and Mary Barnes. Rebecca was a mother who left 2 orphan daughters behind in this world.
Mary Barnes from Farmington, 1663.
Mary Barnes, the wife of Sergeant Thomas Barnes of Farmington, was indicted for the crime of witchcraft. Records no longer exist to tell us how Mary was charged for this crime. It is believed that Rebecca Greensmith or Ann Cole may have named her as a witch. Mary was indicted and hanged in Hartford with both Greensmiths. Mary Barnes was the last person in the Connecticut colony hanged for witchcraft. Later trials took place, but none resulted in the loss of life. By 1750, the crimes of witchcraft mysteriously disappeared from Connecticut law books.
I just wanted to say something briefly about Alice Young because I didn't earlier. Alice, the first who was accused during a high mortality rate in Windsor at the time in 1647. A flu epidemic had gone through town. Many children died, including those of the minister, the town doctor, and magistrates. Alice left behind a young daughter, as did many others. And with that, we offer a rose to all the orphans.
For additional information about Connecticut witch trials, go to the Facebook page CT Witch Memorial. We will keep you posted on activities within the state of Connecticut, new books that come out on this subject, future events, as well as future political developments. Thank you very much.